Have you ever stopped to think about how historical figures are transformed into enduring symbols? Giuseppe Garibaldi, for instance, is often celebrated as a quintessential hero of Italian unification. His name evokes powerful images of bravery, unity, and sacrifice. But has this image always been so positive, so clear-cut, and so useful? Before making any conclusions, we need to consider a crucial point. Behind every legendary figure lies a carefully constructed image. And that construction is rarely spontaneous. More often than not, it is directed, orchestrated, and molded by various forces and interests. In Garibaldi's case, we are not merely looking at a man who participated in a series of battles and revolutions. We are examining a figure whose image was methodically built and reshaped by different people, at different times, for different reasons. From the propaganda-laden newspapers of the 19th century to modern political rhetoric, Garibaldi has been layered with meanings that stretch far beyond the scope of his actual life. What was originally historical fact gradually became narrative, and that narrative evolved into a powerful tool for ideological influence. This leads us to the central idea of our discussion: understanding how Garibaldi's image became not only a symbol of Italian unity, but also a carrier of values, ideas, and political strategies. Our goal is to investigate how this image has been constructed, how it has been used, and in some cases, how it has obscured deeper truths. More importantly, this exploration allows us to reflect on how we consume historical narratives today. If you've ever found yourself wondering why certain individuals are remembered as heroes, while others fade into obscurity or are demonized, or why some historical narratives are more popular and widely accepted than others, then this discussion is for you. Together, let's dissect these stories not to undermine genuine achievements, but to promote something much more important: a conscious, critical approach to understanding the past. Giuseppe Garibaldi was born in 1807 in Nice, which at that time was part of the French Empire. His life reads like the script of an epic film. Sailor, revolutionary, exile, general. He wasn't confined to the Italian peninsula. He also participated in military campaigns in South America, particularly in Brazil and Uruguay. Throughout his life, he was guided by republican ideals and a strong opposition to absolutist regimes. He played key roles in movements for unification and independence. Without a doubt, Garibaldi was a man of decisive action, but action alone doesn't explain his myth. The other part of the story lies in how that man of action became a lasting symbol. Early on, his image was romanticized and aligned with the concept of the people's liberator. In Brazil, he fought alongside the Farroupilas. In Uruguay, he was hailed as a defender of freedom. In Italy, he led the famous Red Shirts, volunteers who were essential to the campaign for unification. His distinctive beard, red scarf, and battle attire made him an iconic visual figure, recognizable and easily stylized. But it's essential to emphasize that Garibaldi didn't shape this image on his own. Even during his lifetime, his persona was elevated and spread through media, newspapers, pamphlets, paintings, and eventually books and films. His figure was transformed into a brand, a symbol of patriotism, valor, and sacrifice. Over time, the real man was eclipsed by the myth built around him. This realization brings us to a vital question: how much of Garibaldi's image is based on historical reality, and how much of it is rooted in constructed narratives designed to inspire or manipulate? A hero is not defined solely by their deeds, but by how those deeds are presented, retold, and reinterpreted. The space between the man and the myth is exactly where we must focus our attention to understand the forces shaping our historical memory. This leads us to another key element in the creation of a national hero: the media's role. The divide between the historical Garibaldi and the mythological figure began to solidify with the rise of mass communication. In the 19th century, newspapers were a dominant force in influencing public opinion. Within this media ecosystem, Garibaldi's image was expanded into something far more impactful as symbolic representation of the struggle for Italian unification. Periodicals of the time across Europe and in parts of Latin America embraced Garibaldi with enthusiasm. His victories were celebrated and magnified, while his setbacks were either downplayed or spun in a favorable light. Eye-catching reports, impassioned testimonials, patriotic manifestos all contributed to the image of a selfless hero driven purely by noble goals. The myth became so potent that Garibaldi was often likened to religious or mythological figures. In many narratives, he took on the role of a messianic figure leading the people to freedom. Its glorification didn't end with his death in 1882. On the contrary, it intensified. School textbooks, official biographies, museum exhibits, and later cinematic portrayals all reaffirmed a heroic image. Garibaldi became a cornerstone of Italian national heritage. His likeness appeared on stamps, currency, public monuments, and statues, often framed in reverent, almost sacred tones. Perhaps most intriguing is how the media didn't merely recount Garibaldi's life. It reinterpreted and reframed his story according to the values and political goals of the time. During liberal eras, he was portrayed as a freedom-loving Republican. In more conservative periods, he was rebranded as a disciplined soldier of order. And under authoritarian regimes, Garibaldi was presented as a populist model of devotion to the state. The same individual interpreted in vastly different ways. Recognizing the media's role in this myth-making process is crucial to understanding how historical memory is manipulated. Sometimes what we accept as history is less a transparent record of past events and more a carefully polished reflection of contemporary ideologies. That becomes even more apparent when we consider how politics has used Garibaldi's image as a symbol of power. If media constructed the myth of Garibaldi, then political institutions quickly grasped the strategic value of that myth. A figure representing bravery, sacrifice, and national pride was immensely valuable for advancing various ideological goals of end, when those goals conflicted with Garibaldi's personal beliefs. During the period of Italian unification, the newly formed state needed unifying symbols. Garibaldi, with his charismatic presence and combat record, was adopted as a national icon. Although he personally criticized the monarchy that assumed control after unification, his image was nonetheless used to rally the people and legitimize the new regime. This trend continued in later decades. Authoritarian governments, including Mussolini's fascist regime, appropriated Garibaldi's persona. Despite his democratic and anti-authoritarian views, Garibaldi was portrayed as a loyal nationalist, a perfect embodiment of Italian greatness. The contradiction between his ideals and how he was used mattered little. The symbol served its purpose. This pattern extended beyond Italy's borders. Across political divides, leaders from both the right and left invoked Garibaldi to lend credibility to their causes. His words were quoted often out of context and his image was used as a political wildcard. He became a flexible, universal figure who could stand for almost anything, depending on who was speaking. This isn't about discrediting Garibaldi or his accomplishments. Instead, it's about acknowledging how his image was reshaped to serve a variety of agendas. This understanding helps reveal how historical heroes can be used not for who they were, but for what they symbolize to those in power. And this kind of symbolic repurposing has deep implications for how we interpret history. In our present age, dominated by digital media and instantaneous communication, the debate around figures like Garibaldi has become more nuanced and more urgent. Historical revisionism, once confined to academic circles, now reaches mass audiences. Digital platforms allow anyone to question official narratives and present alternative perspectives. Today, many scholars adopt a critical stance, not just analyzing what Garibaldi did, but how his image has been utilized by institutions and political entities. There's a growing call to untangle myth from fact. The figure once seen as an untouchable hero is now studied within the context of broader political, social, and cultural movements. This includes reevaluating the voices left out of traditional historical narratives. Many of the groups affected by Italian unification, peasants, minorities, women, and regional communities, did not always view Garibaldi's efforts as liberating. For some, unification brought disruption, repression, and loss of autonomy. This invites us to see Garibaldi's story not as a monolithic tale of progress, but as a complex narrative with winners and losers. To question Garibaldi's image is to engage in a deeper, sometimes uncomfortable interrogation of national history. This doesn't mean erasing his legacy, it means understanding it in full. National myths are powerful, but they're also limiting. They often obscure the contradictions and conflicts that define real historical change. By exploring how Garibaldi was turned into a symbol, we can better recognize how historical narratives are crafted and why. The construction of Garibaldi's myth shows that history is not just about facts, but about storytelling. These stories are often shaped by those with the power to tell them and used to build a sense of identity, justify political decisions, or solidify social order. Reflecting on Garibaldi's image urges us to look at the present with sharper eyes. Just as his legacy was molded over time, so too are the public figures we encounter today. Image manipulation, strategic messaging, and historical references remain tools of influence. And the more aware we are of these tools, the better equipped we are to think critically. Ultimately, studying the creation of Garibaldi's image offers a compelling lesson. History is not a static recounting of events. It is a dynamic arena where narratives are constructed, contested, and revised. Every hero we celebrate and every villain we condemn is part of a broader process of historical negotiation. Understanding that process empowers us not just as students of the past, but as participants in the present. We become better citizens when we learn to see history not as something given, but as something made.